All right, let's just dive right in. What we're about to do here is start a journey of inquiry. And not just into the world out there, but into your world. To try and figure out what gives it meaning, what makes something beautiful, and maybe even where evil comes from. And that journey pretty much immediately leads us to this massive, fundamental question. This is the kind of question that isn't just about what we see, right? It's about the very fabric of existence. You could say it's the deep end of the pool, and, well, that's exactly where philosophy loves to swim. Because what we're really doing is asking a deeper kind of why. We're trying to go beyond what science alone can tell us. I mean, sure, we can learn all about hormones and neurotransmitters, but philosophy wants to ask the questions that those chemicals raise, but can't fully answer on their own. And that gets at a really crucial difference. Science is fantastic at describing the world. It tells us what is. But philosophy, it takes the next step. It evaluates the world. It asks, what does it all mean? And how should we act in it? You know, it's kind of like the difference between knowing the ingredients of a cake and asking if it's a good cake. And this illustrates the point perfectly. I mean, think about this for a second. Science can map my brain chemistry, and psychology can trace my upbringing. But can either one definitively answer this question about free will? If all my actions are just a long chain of cause and effect, where does something like responsibility even fit in? See? These are the really complex, tangled problems that philosophy was basically born to tackle. So where did this whole way of thinking even come from? Well, let's jump back to its origins and see how this incredible intellectual shift happened. We're going to trace its roots all the way back to ancient Greece, over 2.5 millennia ago. Get this, around 500 BCE, something amazing was happening in the world. While these early philosophers were popping up in Greece, similar intellectual explosions like Buddhism and Jainism were developing at the exact same time over in Asia. It was like a global awakening. And then, about a century later, you have places like Plato's Academy being established, which really cemented this new tradition of analytical thought. So the big shift in ancient Greece was this distinction they made between mythos and philos. For centuries, we understood the world through mythos, through stories and myths. Think of Homer's epic poems. But philos, that was a totally new approach. It was about trying to understand the world through analysis, through reason, and through what we'd now recognize as the very first scientific methods. Which, of course, brings us to the word itself, philosophia. It literally translates to the love of wisdom. And it wasn't just about knowing things, it was about the active, passionate pursuit of understanding. It was a brand new way to try and make sense of everything around us. Okay, so philosophy isn't just one giant, messy pile of questions. It's actually organized. Traditionally, we can break it all down into 3 main branches, and each one tackles a different, fundamental area of inquiry. And here they are: metaphysics, epistemology, and value theory. Just think of these as the 3 core pillars that hold up the entire structure of philosophical thought. So let's take a quick look at each one. First up, we've got metaphysics. This is the big one. It looks at the world and asks, what is all of this really? Is it just matter and energy, or is there something more going on here? It's all about the fundamental structure of existence itself. So yeah, metaphysics tries to understand the nature of being itself. This is where you find those huge questions like, is there a God? Do I have a soul that's going to survive after I die? It deals with all the stuff that makes up our reality, both the stuff we can see and the stuff we can't. Okay, on to our second branch. If metaphysics asks, what is real? Epistemology asks, well, how can we be sure? How do we even know the things we think we know? You could almost call it the study of knowing itself. So yeah, this branch is the study of knowledge. It really pushes us to ask, is the world actually how it seems to me? Is what I'm experiencing right now actually true? Epistemology forces us to question the source and the certainty of our beliefs, right down to that fundamental doubt. Can we ever be 100% sure about anything? And finally, our third branch, value theory. This is where philosophy gets super practical. It takes all those heady concepts about reality and knowledge and asks, okay, so given all that, what do we do? How should we live our lives? Essentially, value theory gives us a framework for our decisions. It helps us analyze why we choose to attach meaning and importance to certain things over others, and that thinking guides how we actually live. And value theory itself is usually split into 2 main areas. First, you've got ethics, which isn't just some simple list of right and wrong, but the deep study of how we should live with each other.
And second, there's aesthetics, the study of beauty and art, which asks that classic question, is beauty just in the eye of the beholder, or is there something more to it?
So we've got our big questions, right? But how in the world do we even begin to answer them? Well, that's where this next part comes in. We're shifting from the what of philosophy to the how by looking at the single most essential tool a philosopher has. And that tool is logic. Honestly, the best way to think about it isn't as another branch with its own questions, but as the toolbox itself. It's the collection of saws and hammers and measuring tapes that philosophers use to build their answers in a way that's clear and systematic. And using that toolbox is a pretty straightforward process. It's all about reasoning. You start with a question, you build a strong argument to support your point of view, and, this part is critical, you learn how to avoid logical fallacies. You know, those sneaky little errors in reasoning that can make a really bad argument sound like a good one. Now, I know all of this can seem pretty abstract. Metaphysics, epistemology, these are big academic-sounding words. But here's the thing. I guarantee you are already doing this. Let's bring this right down to your everyday life. I mean, seriously, think about it. Every single time you get into a debate with your parents, and you're trying to justify your position, trying to convince them you're right about something, or even when you make a simple choice, like eating a salad for lunch instead of a Hot Pocket, you are doing philosophy. You're thinking about the world and your place in it. You're figuring out what you value, why you value it, and what you should do about it. And look, this is probably the most important takeaway of all. Philosophy isn't about memorizing what a bunch of old guys in togas said centuries ago. Success isn't about knowing a list of facts. The real goal is for you to use your brain to wrestle with these huge questions and to forge the answers that make the most sense to you. So the question isn't just what is philosophy, it's what is your philosophy?